So I recently built a podcast studio for my buddy Dave. The budget was tight, and at the time, he didn't even have a name for his podcast, which was fine because the goal here wasn't branding. It was, of course, building the studio and to show him what was possible. And this video is where I'll show you exactly how you can create an instant graphics package. Fast, temporary, and good enough to build some momentum. All right, let's dig in. And the cherry on top when we're building a studio is putting the graphics package in place. So that usually consists of, at the very least, a full screen like show title graphic, and then like a lower third name graphic. And that's exactly what we want to do here with Dave. Now, here's the thing. Dave doesn't have like a whole branding team that's building this stuff for him. He'll often work with different freelancers to create assets when he needs them. I took that as a challenge to, hey, why don't we just whip something up in GPT real quick? So here's what I said. Make me a title image for my podcast called The Death of Real Estate. I need a widescreen 1920 by 1080 image, and I'd like to use a darker background and leverage black, red, and white as the color scheme. And let me just say, I think ChatGPT knows I like things a little bit dark. So here's what it came up with, which I think is fantastic. It did some weird things like the title is really, really close to the edge there, and it's extra scary and very bloody. And Dave thought this was fantastic, but he did think the bloody scythe might be taking it a little bit too far. Knowing that, I could have talked more with GPT about it, but instead what I like to do at this stage, especially since I know this would be really simple and we liked everything as it was otherwise, I didn't want to have more of a convo with GPT. I wanted to bring it into Photoshop and fix it up. Because what I've seen is if I continue working on this too much with GPT, other things that I liked changed to things that I don't necessarily like. So I was like, screw it. I'm just gonna hop into Photoshop and fix it. So here's exactly what we did. I just made a new 1920 by 1080 canvas, pasted my image in there, which I know isn't gonna be quite 1920 by 1080, despite the fact that I told GPT, I just think it can't do that. I just selected all the white space, expanded by 10 pixels, and then I'm gonna use my marquee tool, which is the M key. I'm gonna right click on it, and I'm gonna click Generative Fill. I'm not actually even gonna type anything, because it's gonna see the rest of the image and fill it with appropriate, in this case, mostly just black darkness, but it'll be nice and smooth. And it'll give me 3 options. So here's option 1, option 2, and option 3. And they're all pretty much identical, which is great. I only need one of them. Now the other thing was the scythe. Dave wasn't a big fan. So I'm gonna use the object selection tool and just shift click on the 2 items. So there's the top of the scythe, and then this one, it looks like I'll need to drag because it wants to grab more of it. So I'm just gonna drag over the bottom there. And now I have my whole scythe selected. And again, I'm gonna go and select, modify, expand my selection by, let's say, just 5 pixels this time. And I'm gonna essentially do the same exact thing, put generative fill in here. Now, the problem is, if I do a selection that's very much the shape of something, when I do a generative fill, sometimes it will actually regenerate the same thing because it recognizes the shape of my selection. That doesn't always happen. So that did not happen here, so that's great. I've noticed though, if you do like the shape of a torso, it'll put some random person. So yeah, all 3 of these look good. So again, I'm just gonna keep that. Now, basically, I've got now an image that is ready to rock for my full screen title. I would like to also create a transparent overlay that has the title of the show and Jeremy and Dave's name on the graphic. So back here in GPT, I said, great. Now make me a version of this, but just the words that I can use as a lower third and add the names of the hosts on screen next to it. Leave a blank space for that. I wanted to be clear that I needed some space for the names. So here's what we got. Death of Real Estate hosted by. So it really took my directions very literally and it was too much. It's not what I needed, but it was actually enough to make it work. So what I did is I grabbed this image, right click, copy image, went over into Photoshop again, paste, and I'm just gonna grab the logo part of this. And I wonder, could I have just grabbed it from here? Probably, but there's a lot of red behind that red, and you'll see in a second why that might be a problem. So I'm just gonna make a new image, take that one I just grabbed, and here's another place that I love to use the object selection tool, which is W or Shift W to get to the right one. Sometimes I can just drag a box over all the text and it'll get it. In this case, that did not work, as you can see. So what I can do though is just go over each individual kind of chunk here, and boom, now I've got the bottom there. I'm gonna hold Shift, and usually, sometimes you can try dragging over, that's not gonna work, but I'm just gonna do a few letters at a time. There we go, I got those letters. So I'm holding Shift down while I'm dragging over these just to get a few letters at a time. Because sometimes if I try to do all of them, it thinks I want to do something else, which is not the case. Let's see if I can do all of death of at once though. Let's try that. Yep, I got death of all at once. Now and now my 2 red lines. This seems kind of tedious, but hey, it's actually way faster than it used to be, which I'm not gonna complain. So now I've got all my things selected, which is great. And I'm just gonna go over here to make a new adjustment layer of a solid color. And I'm just gonna pick white. Look at that. I'm gonna turn off the layer below and turn this layer black. Boom, there we go. Now I've got a solid color of my whole logo that's ready to go. And it's high enough resolution selection for what I'm trying to do. Again, this is down and dirty. This is quick. This is not what I would do if I was creating a full actual graphics package for somebody, but just to whip something up real quick, this is perfect. So now I have my selection and I still want to retain the red bits. So I'm just gonna grab my marquee selection tool and draw a box over all this. And I love doing this sort of, I don't know the technical term for this, but if I hold Command, Option, and Shift and click on my mask that I've created for my object while I have that marquee, I'm gonna basically combine those two selections. So it's gonna take the selections within those selection that I made. So now I have just the selection of the red, so I'm gonna make a new solid color of red, and look at that. And now I need to do the same thing for the white because I don't want the white below it. So I'm just gonna grab the depth of, and actually the simplest thing I'll do here is invert my selection, which is Command-Shift-I. Go to this and fill that with black. So now I have two layers. One that's the white stuff, one that's the red stuff. And if I turn off my background, boom, it's transparent, which is even more important. I'm gonna select all, Command-Shift-C to copy. That's called a copy merged. I love that feature. And then I can make a new document. The ATEM Mini Pro likes PNGs that are 1920 by 1080. And I'm just gonna paste that thing I made, turn off my background, right there. And I like to turn this immediately into a smart object. If I scale it down and then try to scale it back up, it would be lossy. It would lose resolution. But if I turn it to a smart object first, I can scale it down and then scale it back and it won't lose any softness. And then basically I just type in their names. So Dave Hitchcock, and I think I had him on the right and Jeremy Stuber on the left there. And basically just something like this. Again, very quick down and dirty mock-up of my graphic. I think the only other thing I often will do with this type of thing is put a gradient, a black gradient beneath all of this. So I'll just use my gradient tool and select a basic foreground color to transparent color gradient. And I do something like this that kind of goes kind of high. And then I drop the opacity of this to like, 75, something like that. And boom, there we go. Now I've got a lower third graphic that's got the two names, it's got the logo in there, and I can still kind of play with this, futz around, maybe make the logo a little bigger, whatever I want, right? And I can basically just save this out. The way I like to do it is save for web, which is File, Export, Save for Web, or Command-Shift-Option-S, something like that. And then I just use the preset for PNG 24. I don't know why I like doing it that way. You could just do File, Save As, PNG. That works just fine as well. Then I have this PNG file that I'm gonna load into the ATEM Mini Pro. Now, I should note, in the ATEM software, there's a couple ways you can do it. You can do a PNG file, you can also use a Targa file, and a lot of people swear by the Targa as the TGA files, which are great. They're huge, so I don't like that part about it because I like to be able to email these things around all the time. If you're using a PNG file, you can't use what's called a pre-multiplied key. You actually wanna do some settings here, and here's the settings I like to use. 45.5 clip and a 15.5 gain. Those settings I find work really well with transparent PNGs in your media tab. So the way you load it into the ATEM is go to media here, and then you can see here's all the different PNGs I have. So let's grab the one I just made, titled.png, I drag it in here, and now that transparent PNG is loaded into the memory of my ATEM Mini Pro. So if I were to unplug the ATEM and plug it back in, it's still there. The only model that doesn't stay true on is the original ATEM Mini. The memory gets wiped every time you unplug it, which is super fun. Every other ATEM Mini though, the ATEM Mini Pro, the ISO, it will retain the images that you load into it. And then basically, yeah, we're gonna use Companion to now take those graphics and tell it to load it into the player and do several things basically at one button push. Now here is my Companion programming. So this is not the setup I use for Dave's, but it's similar in the way that I use graphics. So I have a button here that it has the name of the PNG. It's actually calling the ATEM using this thing in Companion called variables. So it'll actually take the file name of the PNG file that I loaded into the ATEM and make that the title of the button. I love that. And I have it even programmed so if it doesn't have a title, it just says still 4, which is useful for me as well, because then I know if it's empty, more or less. I built this a long time ago, back before they added some new features to Companion that make it a lot easier to do the graphics calling that I'm doing right now. So in mine, I'm using what's called a trigger. When a certain condition is set, it'll load all these different things and it checks all kinds of stuff. It's actually gotten a lot easier to do this now. And again, if you want to see a tutorial on how I make it so that you hit one button and a graphic fades up, you hit another button, that first graphic fades out and the new one fades in, let me know in the comments. I'd be happy to make another video detailing more of how to do that inside of BitFocus Companion here, because I think it's pretty fun. But basically the idea is you hit one of these buttons and then that graphic will show up on screen. And that's the point. This isn't about final logos or perfect branding. It's about creating something quickly so that your client can see what's possible and feel confident moving forward. ChatGPT gets you speed, Photoshop gives you control, and in minutes, you've got a graphics package that you can actually use, test, and then iterate on later. If you try this, drop a comment and tell me how it went, what worked, what changed, or what got weird. All right, be sure to like, subscribe, and of course, share this with someone who's still waiting on branding. And if you want to see how this fits into Dave's full podcast studio build, that video is linked right here. All right, catch you in the next one.